The 20th century was driven by a soaring optimism. Politicians, architects, and scientists believed that with enough planning, they could design away poverty and engineer the perfect society from the top down. You can see this extreme confidence in architects like Le Corbusier, who created pristine, highly formalized models to engineer perfect living spaces for the masses. This sterile, schematic vision was physically executed on a massive scale. Cities like Brasilia were carved out, heavily partitioned, and ordered by strict geometric logic. The same top-down logic was applied to nature. Massive agricultural modernization efforts, like Soviet collectivization, attempted to feed millions using industrial, mechanized formulas. Despite spanning different continents and ideologies, these diverse projects shared a unified goal: to apply rational design to improve the human condition. But when these rigid blueprints met the unpredictable, complex lives of millions, the friction was catastrophic. Plans that looked perfect on paper often brought death and disruption to the very people they were meant to serve. During China's Great Leap Forward, a plan to rapidly industrialize the countryside redirected an entire agricultural workforce into making crude steel in backyard furnaces. The result was a collapsed food supply and a societal fracture on a scale that no architect had predicted. Why do the most heavily resourced, scientifically ambitious plans for society consistently go so tragically awry? In his book Seeing Like a State, James C. Scott argues that centrally managed plans misfire because they force a rigid template onto a messy, real-world reality. The entire process begins with administrative ordering. An organic cluster of human activity is forced into a uniform grid. States simplify societies to make them legible, easier to map and manage. But this grid ignores vital connections between the dots, erasing complex interdependencies because they cannot be understood from above. This drive for administrative legibility allows a state to map a population, but it does so by blinding itself to ground-level reality. This blindness is fueled by high modernist ideology, a supreme confidence that science can engineer every aspect of human life. Under this ideology, citizens are viewed not as individuals, but as interchangeable data points to be optimized for a master vision. To turn that vision into a mandate, the government must possess authoritarian state power, the sheer force required to intervene in the lives of its subjects on a massive scale. Absolute ideological confidence, backed by unchecked state power, turns a flawed theory into an inescapable reality. This machine only functions when the people beneath it are too weak, fractured, or repressed to push back. Scott calls this a prostrate civil society. When these four conditions align, the state apparatus behaves like an unfeeling machine. It plows forward, leveling everything in its path. This systemic bulldozer does irreversible violence to intricate local economies, fragile networks that simply cannot be seen or managed by a bureaucrat at a distance. These four steps create the formula that transforms development theory into a humanitarian disaster. Imperialistic state planning assumes that formal academic knowledge generated by bureaucrats is the only valid form of intelligence. It ignores the local, practical knowledge of the people actually surviving in a specific environment. Agricultural modernization in the tropics failed because it stripped away generations of localized, hands-on farming techniques. Planners replaced tested survival skills with formal theories that could not account for local conditions. A society cannot survive on formal science alone. It requires the practical knowledge of its inhabitants to function safely. The history of the 20th century suggests that any grand design for the human condition requires profound humility from its planners, not just scientific rigor. Successful social organization must integrate the messy desires, values, and objections of its subjects, rather than overriding them for the sake of a clean blueprint. True improvement of the human condition is impossible if a system systematically disregards the very humans it is trying to save.